Greetings everyone, welcome to chapter 6. We'll be discussing how to manage quality. So in this video, we'll specifically just discuss some of the concepts of TQM, some of the concepts of total quality management. Now, why is quality important? Well, one way to look at it is that it increases our profitability. And it can do that if we just look at the sales. How does it increase our sales? Well, imagine we can sell hotel rooms at a higher rate. Or, we have an improved reputation, so we can sell more hotel rooms. Now, how does it reduce our costs? Well, if we're more efficient, we have less problems. We have to comp less rooms. Maybe we have to give away less food. All those things is going to help us reduce our costs. So, of course, it's really important from a service point of view. The more quality of product, more quality of service that we have, the most likely we can charge and command a higher price for our services. Now, how do we define quality? Well, there's lots of definitions out there, but we'll look at two just in one moment here. So here we have the point of view from the operations manager. What is their goal is to actually build a system that not only can identify the customer or the guest needs, but also satisfy them. So that's one way to look at it. As an operations manager, we need to build a sort of system to do that, okay? And what we're really looking at is really the totality of all of the characteristics of that service, right? And whether or not we are able to satisfy those implied needs. So the bottom definition is really helpful for us to start thinking of total quality management as really that idea that it's a total commitment, total concept in regards to each part of the service from start to finish, and that's really important. So total quality management, as we kind of mentioned already, it is this idea that the entire organization is required to help achieve it, okay? And that's what we're doing, is we're really stressing that commitment, that importance, that it is something that from start to finish, from every person involved in the organization, that helps us achieve that level of quality, that level of service. So let's look at those we'll look at 5 concepts that we will be discussing, and then you'll see how these concepts will start applying to the tools of TQM in the next video. But here are concepts here, and we'll start with continuous improvement. But as the name suggests, it's this really never-ending process. Okay. Now, who is responsible for it, or what are we trying to improve? Well, we're really trying to improve all aspects of the business. And again, in the service industry, you have your people you have to rely on, you have your equipment, you have your suppliers, you have materials, you have systems. All of these things are important when you're trying to create a successful operation. So this is the idea, again, that any part of that operation can be improved. Again, think back to those 10 decisions as we go through this course, and each one of those decisions, those topics, there's always an opportunity to be improved. And there's a great saying that don't worry about perfection because you'll never achieve it, and that's really the idea. But we also recognize that we can always, strive to achieve perfection. It doesn't mean that we should, just quit in trying to be perfect, but that's the idea with total quality or continuous improvement. Specifically, is this concept of trying to continuously get to that level of perfection. So a good diagram, a good step-by-step concept is to think of it as, you start with sort of planning how you can maybe solve a problem, or maybe it might be a goal that you want to reach. Then number 2 is you actually test it out, you implement that plan. Then you need to check on it, maybe evaluate whether or not it's successful. And then, of course, we need to kind of assess or make adjustments to that plan to make sure that for the next time we can improve on the goal or the process, so that we would go again and start again on number 1 and continue that cycle. Okay, this is why we see this as a continuous loop that we're continuing to do. Now, in regards to Six Sigma, you might have heard this before. Maybe in statistics class you've discussed, I'm sure you should at least have discussed sigma before. Okay, so when you look at it statistically, we'll start with that meaning. There's two in total, but we'll start with the idea that statistically, if we look at this graph here, we actually see 6 sigma here. So we start at -3 all the way to 3 sigma. And the idea is that, we're trying to achieve about 99.73% free of defects. Okay, so, we look at this maybe from a manufacturing point of view, but imagine you had 93.73% positive reviews on TripAdvisor or something like that. Okay, that's what 6 sigma represents. And there's a tiny area here after the -3 sigma, and here as well after the +3 sigma that is about 3.14 defects per million, or imagine 3.4 negative reviews per every million reviews. Okay, so again, we don't expect to be perfect, but if we have 99.73% positive reviews, then we've achieved 6 sigma. That's what we're trying to achieve. Okay, now that's the statistical kind of meaning, but there are programs out there. There's actual certifications that you can get that represents your ability and your knowledge on achieving 6 sigma. Okay, so again, really the goal is just to be as perfect as you can to achieve the highest level of perfection, or be as improved as possible, and that's what we mean by 6 sigma. We want to be about as almost perfect, and that's the goal. Now, in order to do that, in order to be able to achieve such a high level of perfection, we need to empower our employees. Okay, so this is another concept that's really important in total quality management, and it makes sense because we're talking about, again, we're talking about that full commitment with our team. Well, the only way you're going to get a commitment from your team is if you empower these employees. And why is that important? Well, particularly in the service industry, it's extremely important because they're the ones who are, they're the frontline workers. They're the ones who are cleaning the beds. They're the ones that are checking in the guests. They're the ones that are cooking the food. So they understand, the most efficient way, most efficient processes, and they're often the ones that will come up with the best solutions. Okay, so again, we're talking about where are the places we want to improve. Well, if 85% of the problems are usually based on the processes or the materials that we're using, well, who are the ones that are going to be best known to be familiar with them? The experts are going to be your employees. They're the ones that are going to be using those processes and materials. Okay, so how do we do those things? Well, in a more general point of view, it's just have a lot of staff meetings, have opportunities for your staff to communicate and feel free. Have that open door policy, right? This is what I mean by having supportive supervisors. Really important. Give more responsibility to your employees, right? So maybe you get one of your employees to check everyone else's side duties, or you have closing duties for some of your employees. So just empower them to have more responsibility. That really helps them become more empowered. Also, maybe you have a certain budget you can give out for if there's guest situations. Empower your staff to be able to credit a $100 room, or give out some comp drinks, things of that nature. So again, that's one of the ways we can give staff a little bit more responsibility. And of course, morale is important. So again, going back to the idea of staff meetings, maybe you have some staff outings and things of that nature. So it's really important to get them kind of engaged and empowered in the process. Now, there are some, organizations out there that have a little bit more structured meetings, which happen, of course. I know companies like Fairmont and the Pan Pacific, they will actually have committees that are very much responsible for improving processes, and they might meet once a month or every quarter. For instance, we have the Associate Response Team meeting. These are non-management members. They're usually facilitated by maybe the director of HR, okay? And basically they have representatives from every department, and they'll come in and talk about how they can improve processes. And it's particularly important and helpful if you're looking at members from different departments, because they can help, with sort of cross-departmental issues that may not have been recognized if we were just looking at each department. So that's a really important aspect of TQM. And that goes back to that commitment of continuous improvement on every employee as part of the organization. Now, another helpful sort of concept is this idea of benchmarking. We talked about the plan, do, check, act. Well, one way to check how you're doing is if you have some sort of standards. And that's ultimately what benchmarking is that you're setting some sort of practice or some sort of standard for performance. Okay, so of course, depending on how to benchmark, that's up to the organization. But maybe an example might be we want to be the top 10 in TripAdvisor or something like that. Ranked hotels in Vancouver. That's an example of having a certain benchmark, right? And again, we might have a team that's part of that. Okay, you might need other partners, so maybe you want to work with TripAdvisor to figure out how to do that, such a goal. Okay, and of course, you obviously going to start evaluating, making sure that you're meeting that information. Maybe TripAdvisor says you need more reviews. Maybe you need more positive reviews. Maybe you need to respond more earlier. All of those things are going to help us understand the opportunity. You want to communicate that throughout the staff meetings. And again, make sure that everybody knows that that's your goal. Okay, so again, once we analyze the information, we need to take action and see if there's ways that we can increase the likelihood of achieving that goal. Now, when it comes to benchmarking, if you are a big hotel company, like let's say Fairmont, you can actually use your own internal benchmarks. So we talked about TripAdvisor, but maybe you have guest satisfaction scores. And, we might take the average guest satisfaction score of all Fairmonts, and that might be your benchmark for other hotels to achieve. So, that's one of the benefits of being a bigger brand, is that you can actually use internal benchmarks as well. Okay, so those are some concepts, and we'll talk more about the actual tools in our next video. But I just wanted to leave you with some, ways that we can help with service recovery, and we'll talk more about this in our class. But just to think about some practices that we can use. And if you consider, for instance, TripAdvisor reviews, these are some really helpful best practices that we can use for service recovery. We'll definitely discuss more on this in our class. Excellent. So for this video, our focus has been discussing or understanding our TQM concepts. Stay tuned for the next video where we look at TQM tools. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.